So one of the important topic that we are about to discuss now is handling the synchronization issues. So synchronization plays a very important role whenever we are automating a website. So at times we need to wait for a couple of elements to become visible on the page, and then we're going to perform some action. A couple of elements to become present on the page, or become enabled on the page, or maybe becoming clickable on the page, right? So there are a number of expected conditions where we actually need to perform some wait before we perform a particular action like typing or clicking on that particular element, right? So let's say like before this Serenity framework, if you have ever worked on Selenium, so there are a lot of techniques available to handle synchronization issues. You may have heard about something called as implicit wait or explicit wait or fluent wait, right? So let's say if I talk about a very simple Selenium example, see with this Serenity API, the best part is that in case you want to use Selenium classes as well, so you can create a simple class and you can add your Selenium code as well, right? Although we are not covering Selenium in this course, we will be focusing completely on Serenity BDD. So that is what in the initial lectures I have already mentioned that when you're working on Serenity framework, you should have basic understanding of Selenium, right? So this is one of the simple code. What I'm doing, I'm navigating to gmail.com, and then on Gmail, I'm trying to enter a username, then click on next button, and then entering the password. So let's say the scenario is like enter the username, then click on next button, and then enter the password field. So what we need to do is, let's say if I run this, let's see if it works absolutely fine or not. So it navigates, enter, and clicked, and then didn't enter the password. And if you take a look over here, uh, you're gonna see an exception saying no such element, unable to locate this particular element with the XPath, right? Although if I write the same code using our Serenity framework, so maybe let's say I'll copy this class and create a new class. Name it as Serenity Gmail test. And in this, what I'm going to do is we are navigating to gmail.com itself, and let's remove this, and I'll remove all this, right? And I'll change this to gmail.com. So with Serenity, if I try writing the code for let's say find, and I'll say by dot id dot send keys, and if I write my mail ID over here after entering the username, I'm just gonna copy this, and I'll say by dot xpath, by dot xpath, and here I'm gonna perform click on the next button, right? So now what I'll do, I'll just take these locators, the ID, copy, paste the locator of next button, and then the locator of password. So locating elements are very simple with the help of your internal browser console menu. You can do that. You just need to right click on it and inspect the element, and here you should be able to see the ID of this particular element. This is the ID of the element. In case you want to get the password, let's say for sorry, not the password, the locator of next button, you can simply right click. Even you can copy XPath, you can copy selector. Selector will be your CSS selector. So just copy the XPath and you can paste it over here. See, it will gonna look like this, right? So this is what I've used for all three elements. And then performing send keys, click, and then send keys. And now if I'm gonna run it, let's see what happens. So now we are running it through the Serenity framework. Oh, okay. I have not given the complete mail ID. .com. And I'll just add a sleep as well, so that it should not quit immediately. Right, for 3 seconds. Sound with try catch. Yeah. And let's run it again. And you can see it has actually typed in the password, right? So somewhere Serenity is actually handling the basic timeouts within these methods, right? So how are you going to check that? So what I'm going to do, I'll just write some invalid ID over here, right? And let's run it again. So it should not be able to find this element and we should get some exception. And we got an exception. So exception saying no such element exception. And here, did it actually wait? So see page load, I can see some script timeout I can see, but implicit wait I don't see over here. It shows as 0. Maybe what I'll do, I'm gonna call one of the method which a wrapper of send keys type. And now if I run this again, so you can see it is actually waiting and then it terminated, right? If you see over here, this type method, again, you can see expected enabled element was not enabled. So it's not able to find this element and we got an exception over here. It says try it for 5 seconds. See, 5 seconds is inbuilt in it. Right, so it is actually waiting for 5 seconds for a particular element. Right, this is a by default timeout, and this is basically when you use these methods, which are there in the Serenity framework. So these methods provides you an explicit wait on top of that particular element, which is by default of 5 seconds. And initially, I was not using this type method, but still it was working because there is an implicit wait by default of 2 seconds as well. Right. So there are two types of wait. One is implicit wait and the other one is explicit wait. So these waits you may have studied in Selenium if you're not familiar with implicit and explicit wait. So implicit wait is basically applied for the presence of element and it is like defined at the global level. So once we have defined that, okay, implicit wait is for 10 seconds. So for throughout the code, wherever you're finding the element, it will gonna wait for 10 seconds to check the presence of that element. And the wait is dynamic. If an element is found in just 1 second, it will not gonna wait for 10 seconds. It will gonna work on that element in that particular 1 second. And if in those 10 seconds, if it is not able to find the element, then only it will gonna throw you a timeout exception. That timeout after 10 seconds, element is not found. But implicit wait is only tied up to the presence of element. In case you want to use any other condition, like the element is already present but it is not visible. At times there are hidden elements, at times there are enabled elements. For those elements, those are already there in the DOM, already present in the HTML, but not showing up on the UI and taking some time to show up on the UI. So there you will actually going to use explicit waits. So if in case you want to use for any particular element, any particular condition, then you should use explicit wait. In case you want to apply for throughout the code, you want to apply a global timeout, so that you can do it with the help of implicit wait. But implicit wait only works for the presence of element. So the better approach is to use explicit wait. And whenever you are using these methods like type, the inbuilt method from the web element facet interface, then you will actually going to see that by default timeouts are already there. In case you want to check what is the by default timeout, you can even go over here to the type method. So this is basically an interface. The method you're gonna see it in the implementing class over here. So you're gonna see the method type, and type, you're actually gonna find it. Just a moment. So type should be over here. Okay, it's not finding because see type, there are arguments in this method. So type is basically this. See type sending the keys, right? So over here, if you look, then see wait until is already implemented over here. Wait until element available, right? And then through that element, it is actually doing send keys itself, right? So whenever you're directly calling the type, it is actually implementing some wait over here, right? Maybe if you try to find send keys, then send keys direct implementation is over here, but there is no wait applicable to the send keys. And same thing if I gonna call it with click. See, this is a overridden method click. And over here, see wait for an element to visible and enable. So wait until element available, right? And then click on it. So that is the reason when I was using send keys, I was not getting 5 seconds wait, right? It was actually waiting for 2 seconds by default, which is the implicit timeout, right? If in case you want to check what is the by default timeout, so you can check it through the page objects class as well, or I mean there is a method that you can directly call as get implicit wait timeout. So this is the by default timeout, right? And you can change it as well. So this is implicit wait, and then I'm gonna say get wait for timeout. So this wait for timeout is the explicit wait over here. Right, so if I run this now, by default implicit wait is basically 5 seconds, and explicit wait is, implicit wait is 2 seconds and explicit wait is 5 seconds. So let me run it again and let me show it to you. See, this is 2 seconds and this is 5 seconds. So you can also look at inside this interface, this class page objects, and from here, in case you travel to default timeouts, you're gonna find them over here. See, default wait for timeout is 5 seconds and implicit wait is 2 seconds. But you can anytime override these values as well. In case you want to override these values, you can do it programmatically as well. So again, go over here and you can say set implicit wait timeout to, let's say, 10, and this should be so here actually previously we used to do it like time unit dot second, but right now you can see it is actually throwing some exception. So it is saying that it should actually going to come through this temporal unit. Now what change they have done, instead of this import, if you take a look over here, the import for this time unit, it is actually not from this com IBM, right? It should be through Java util itself. But again, if I try to say time unit dot, and if you see over here, seconds, this is the seconds, but still you can say it is not working, right? So here the change that they did is in the recent API, so it should not be through again not be through this Java util time unit, but in Java there is another package that is time dot time dot temporal. See, this is what we were getting in the suggestions. So time dot temporal dot chrono unit. This is chrono unit. From here we can get whether it should like seconds or minutes, right? But again, we have to do a static import over here. So we need to say static and then dot second. So this is what the exact syntax is. And then we can use these seconds directly over here. Right, this is what I mean, you need to understand that this is a little change. So it will actually going to come from this temporal chrono unit class, right, from this package. So yeah, once you are done with this, you have actually increased the implicit wait timeout. Now, if in case again you get this, you go over here and again you try to get the implicit wait value. So you're gonna see that it will gonna change to 10 seconds. And you can see the value is actually changed to 10 seconds. So this is how about how you can get implicit wait and explicit values. And now these settings can be done through the properties file as well, which we're gonna talk about it very soon. But before that, I'm gonna show you some stuff that in case we are working with the default timeouts itself. So do we have different behaviors in different browsers for synchronization? Let's say if I was using this thing correctly, and even if I'm using send keys and then click and then send keys over here, and if I'm running this code, it was working fine, right? When we are using with Serenity, it is working absolutely fine on Chrome browser, but whenever we were using it with Selenium, it was not entering the password, right? Now what I'll do, I'll just change the browser to, let's say, Firefox, and I'll run this one more time. And it didn't type. See, we got an exception immediately. And this time, if you look at the exception, this is element not intractable exception, right? So it is not for element presence, it is for something that is intractable. And again, it is not waiting. Even if you increase the implicit weight, if you want to increase the implicit weight over here, let's say we initially set the implicit timeout, we change the value to 10 seconds. I'll change it to 10 seconds. Even if I run it now, it was still not going to work. So globally, we have changed the time to 10 seconds. Because here, the element is already there. The element is already present in the DOM. So the question is not related to the presence of an element, right? So here the scenario is something which is looking for element to become intractable. The element is not intractable at the moment, right? So what to do? How to make it intractable? We actually need to increase our explicit weight value over here, right? And how to increase the explicit value? What we can do simply over here for this particular element, where it is not able to type, I can say with timeout duration dot off seconds, and I'll change it to, let's say, 10 seconds, and then I'll say dot find. So this is what the explicit weight, how we actually define it. So I'm defining explicit weight with timeout of duration dot seconds 10, and then find the element. And then if we try to run it now, see, it worked now for the Firefox browser. And same thing will now going to work for Chrome as well. Although Chrome, it was initially working, but now there is no need to define a global implicit timeout, right? Because 2 seconds is by default, right? If any element needs further wait, you can handle it with the help of with timeout. See, it works fine. So this is how we handle synchronization in Serenity, where we focus on implicit weight and explicit weights, right? So we have more to cover in weight, which we're going to see in our upcoming lectures, right? But synchronization plays a very important role. All right. Thank you.